Hi, I'm Maya, and today I want to talk about spooky reads. So first, I just want to apologize that this video is so late. I wanted it to come out at the beginning of October so that you can have a bunch of recommendations for what to read for the month. But I got really busy and didn't have time to make this video, but I still wanted to make it. So now I'll be extra prepared for next October. To start off with, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite authors of all time. I'm sure I've talked about her and gushed about her before on my channel. Her name is Leigh Bardugo, and the book that I'm going to be talking about is Ninth House. So this is the first in a series, and the second one is coming out soon, and I can't wait to read it. I think it's just a duology. I'm not 100% sure though, but this book is so spooky. It's definitely an adult book, there's adult content in it, but if you're okay with that, you should definitely read it. It's a lot different from Bardugo's other books, which are more like high fantasy. This book does have magic in it, but it's more like urban fantasy because it's set in modern day and it takes place at Yale and deals with all of the secret societies there. And so the main character, Alex, can see ghosts, and it's just super creepy, really atmospheric. You really just get sucked into this world. Bardugo is so good at world building in all of her books. But yeah, just the spooky, like, dark academia setting is really entrancing, and the different ideas about ghosts and blood sacrifices and magical rituals are just really unique. It ends with a bunch of cliffhangers, so I'm dying to read the next one. It's just super edgy and dark and brooding and really cool. So I highly recommend it. It's perfect for spooky season in October and all of that. The next one I'm going to talk about is one that I have talked about on my channel before. I have a whole video dedicated to it, so if you're interested, you can check that out. So I'll just briefly talk about it here since I already talked about it at length in my other video. It's Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So I didn't mention this in my other video, but this book does mention cannibalism and incest. So if those things bother you, don't read it. But if they don't bother you, highly recommend it. So spooky, so unique. Straight up horror. Ninth House isn't specifically just horror, like it has other elements to it like magic and fantasy and all that. But this book is just a horror novel. And so that's fun because you know exactly what you're getting into as soon as you start reading it. Something that I really love about this book is the setting, 1950s Mexico, and the main character is really inspiring and vibrant and spunky and a lot of fun to follow on this journey. And there are some straight up terrifying moments that gave me chills and really freaked me out in a great way, and in the best way, in the way that you want a spooky book to freak you out. So yeah, if you haven't read it, you definitely should. Okay, my next one is a book that I actually had to read for one of my college courses, and it is The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. And I didn't know what to expect when I was reading this, especially because it's an older story, so I didn't think it would be that creepy, but it is terrifying. And I also, as part of my class, I had to read this story and then watch the movie version, the 1961 black and white version, and holy cow, you should definitely watch that movie. It's called The Innocents, and especially if you are a fan of scary movies, if you're a fan of older movies like black and white movies, definitely watch it. There are some scenes that are just like even right now thinking about them, I'm getting scared. Just very suspenseful, some jump scares, some very jarring moments. And I don't want to say too much about the movie or about the book because I don't want to spoil it and ruin the surprise and ruin the fun, scary elements. So just basically what it's about are these two creepy children and the governess that takes care of them. That's what's happening in the book and in the movie, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. But I cannot recommend it enough, the book and the movie. You really should read and watch when you get the chance. Oh my gosh, I just saw on the back of this book, it says, Virginia Woolf said that The Turn of the Screw is a masterpiece of psychological ambiguity and suggestion. So, I mean, if that's not enough of a glowing recommendation, I don't know what else will be. Yeah, really well written and very unique and will make you scared of the young children in your life. Yeah, oh, I have a bunch of pages dog-eared. I should go back and look at them. Anyway, so yeah, Turn of the Screw, Henry James, and The Innocents, 1961. Check them out. This next one isn't actually very scary, but it's a classic, and I think I have talked about it in my video about read books for your rainbow bookshelf. I briefly talked about it. So I'm not going to talk about it too much here, but if you haven't read it, you should, just because it is a classic. So Dracula by Stoker. None of it really scared me that much, except the ending where they're doing the final showdown with Dracula, like trying to take him out. That scene does get pretty tense. But yeah, I wouldn't say anything like outright scared me, but it definitely is atmospheric and gives you that fun October Halloween feeling with vampires and everything. If you want more of like an old-fashioned classic, not too scary read for October, this is definitely a good choice for that. Also, just want to do a quick shout out to my favorite character, Quincy. I think he's really, really cool, and I would love to see a book that's just about him. I think he's awesome. So look out for him when you read this. Okay, so I have a surprise for you. It is yet another Leigh Bardugo book. She's just so good, and she's just the queen of spooky, fun, amazing stories. So this is actually a collection of short stories called The Language of Thorns, and they all take place in her Grishaverse, which is her series Shadow and Bone, and then her duology Six of Crows. They all take place in the Grishaverse, and so that's the high fantasy world, not connected to Ninth House at all that I talked about earlier. But yeah, these stories are really spooky. Not all of them, but one in particular that I'm thinking about now, it was really creepy. It's about a nutcracker. Let me see what it's called. It's called The Soldier Prince. So yeah, that one is really scary. It's just sort of like a darker retelling of the Nutcracker story. But yeah, this book is just gorgeous. There are beautiful illustrations. Here are the Nutcracker illustrations, the soldier. But anyway, yeah, so these stories are just dark and magical and good for cozying up on a chilly autumn evening. Okay, and the last one I'm going to talk about is The October Country by Ray Bradbury. I just recently finished reading this. It's a collection of short stories. I love Ray Bradbury. If you haven't read Fahrenheit 451, you definitely should. Great book. And then if you're looking for something spooky, definitely read The October Country. So I would say that some of the stories are definitely better than others. Some of them just weren't very scary. There's one about a baby where the baby is the villain, and it just feels stupid as you're reading it. You're like, what? It's just not believable. It's just not terrifying. Yeah, it's hard to really imagine a baby as something to be scared of. So I think that one is a miss, but so many of the other ones are so good. So masterfully written. He's just such a good author. He has such a way with words. Just a true craftsman when it comes to writing. The words just feel delicious as you read them, and you're just like, oh, super satisfying to read. And some of them are super spooky, and some of them I feel like would be really cool if they were taken and made into movies. Like if they were elongated and just kind of like had stuff added to them and they were stretched out a bit, I think they could make really good full-length movies. There's one called The Scythe that I think would make an amazing movie about this poor family who stumbles across a farm and they find a dead man inside and a note that says that they can have the house and the farm and everything. And then there's a scythe there, and the dad of the family starts using it to chop some wheat, and then creepy, spooky things start happening. Lots of cool twists and turns in that one. Some of the stories are just sweet, like Uncle Einar, I'm not sure how to say the name, about a man with wings and his family, and that one's just really sweet, and it's about like acceptance and finding your place in the world. So that one's not really scary. But what's cool about that one is that that character, Uncle Einar, shows up in another story in the collection called Homecoming, and that one I think is perfect for October and for Halloween, because it's the story of a family of vampires, and they're preparing their house to have a bunch of relatives fly in for the Halloween holiday. And yeah, I really like that one a lot. But yeah, Uncle Einar is a relative of theirs and shows up at the party. And so that's fun, because you're like, hey, I already know him. I read about him before. I think a lot of these stories would be more effective on someone who was scared of death. I'm not personally scared of death, so I don't think some of these stories hit me quite the way that Bradbury intended, I think. But if you are someone who's scared of death, if the afterlife is something you don't believe in or something that puzzles you, if just the thought of mortality versus immortality like frightens you, some of these stories will really freak you out, or at least get you thinking. Some of them just feel like social commentary. Like there's one called The Dwarf, and it's about like how we treat people who have dwarfism, how we treat anyone who we see as an other or as alien, the cruelty that can come with that, the effect that that cruelty can have on the individual who is being bullied or abused, and how that can sometimes have a very dark and troubling effect. Ooh, another one that I think would make a good movie is Jack in the Box. It's about this young boy who's like raised in isolation by his creepy mother and his teacher. Oh, it's really creepy. Just thinking about it's kind of creeping me out. It's basically a cult, and he's raised in a cult. And then I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, the ending's really cool and it's very spooky. And I think that one, if it was lengthened, could be a really good movie. There are some that are funny, like There Was an Old Woman. That one, it's about an old lady who doesn't want to die and like fights death. And it's pretty funny. She's just this stubborn character, and there are a lot of fun lines and fun ideas in that story. I think one of the stories in there that is really creepy is the skeleton. Just some gross, gnarly imagery in that one. I think definitely the most like graphic of all the stories in the collection, and that one's like perfect for Halloween. I think my like favorite story from this collection, if I had to pick a favorite, it's hard because a lot of them are really, really good. But I think like as of right now, the one that's like standing out the most to me and I'm thinking about the most is The Next in Line. And that one is about a couple who's on vacation in Mexico, and they go to see the mummies in the catacombs, and it just gets really spooky and creepy, and the wife kind of has like a breakdown, and yeah, it's really good. And that one's good because I feel like the ending feels like an ending, because with a lot of these stories, they stop right at the climax, right as it's about to get interesting, right when we are about to finally see the monster or the villain or the creepy thing that's been following the protagonist. Like right when that's about to happen, the story ends. Which I understand doing that for a short story, but it can also kind of be unsatisfying. So I think that's why I like The Next in Line so much, because the ending feels like a really good ending. So yeah, I talked about that one way longer than I thought I was going to, but it's just really, really good. And I could see like myself like rereading this every October, because it really just helps like set the mood for spooky season and for Halloween. So those are all the books on my list. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching.